take a look at some Year 12 macro multiple choice questions. I'm taking them from some really old style AQA economics papers, but I really believe this is really useful practice for anyone from any exam boards. They're really great at catching you out, testing your theory, testing your definitions, and the content should be really, really similar, 95% similar. First question, an example of fiscal policy. So I'm looking for something to do with government spending and taxation, specifically for the purpose of helping to manage the business cycle, trying to calm it down a little bit so it doesn't vary as much. So they haven't actually given it to us very clearly. The exchange rate is monetary policy, minimum wage. That's not really government spending. This is a legal requirement, so the government's not spending anything. The budget surplus, if there's a budget surplus, it means G is smaller than T. So if that increases, we know that G has increased or T has decreased, which is what we define fiscal policy as in the beginning, something to do with government spending and taxation. So that looks to be the answer for that one. Economists predict that a negative output gap, aka kind of a recession, is likely to grow over the next couple of years. In the short run, which of the following policies is most likely to help prevent this negative output gap from increasing? Prevent it increasing is preventing a recession getting worse. So we're looking for something that helps the economy, right? We need to help boost the economy. So a really great way to do this, if you don't have a long period of time and under pressure to stop this recession right now, you're looking for something to increase AD. And the two policies are fiscal policy and monetary policy. So let's take a look if we can find one of those. Central bank raising interest rates. This is a monetary policy, but it's actually not a good one to pick because raising interest rates is going to make consumption more expensive, so we will get less consumption. That's not the right one. The government taking action to increase the exchange rate. This is a monetary policy, but again, increased exchange rate is bad news. If you do that, you will decrease X minus M, and that's going to decrease AD. So that will make the economy smaller, not help it grow. An increase in government expenditure accompanied by a growing budget deficit. So more spending sounds to be like a fiscal policy. I like that one. This is meeting the condition, and a growing budget deficit just simply means that government is spending more money and taxing less, which is going to boost AD, and that's what we're looking for. So this is the answer. Which of the following is most likely to lead to an increase in both saving and investment? Just jump to the answer here. Saving and investment is probably done by households. And out of all the options, exchange rate didn't seem that related to households. So I'm going to say it's probably not very likely. More unemployment means households have less income. So that doesn't help them save more or spend more money. So firms invest more. A increase in the interest rate. This is going to reduce consumption, would also reduce investment because firms also have to borrow sometimes to invest, to buy capital and machinery, and they won't do that with higher interest rates. We're left with incomes. If households have higher incomes, they will consume more, but they will also save more. And because there's more consumption in the economy, we can assume that firms predict that they will grow more, and as a result, they're going to want to invest. Policy to reduce inflation. So I'm looking for a decrease in AD, and I'm looking for a shift to the right of AS. And AD decreases if C decreases, I decreases, G decreases, X decreases, and M increases. So let's look at, for some of these, government spending, we want that to fall. And there's nothing else. Interest rates, I suppose, to decrease. Consumption, you want that to increase. The other ones don't seem possibly that related. Well, if there's less money supply, people can spend less money because there's less money available. So I'm looking for these ones to fall probably. And income tax, we want consumption to go down. So if people get taxed more, and then most likely the answer is D, but let me double check with the inflation. So if interest rates rise, AD will fall, which will reduce inflation. So that's looking good. When an economy is operating inside its PPF, it must have a trend rate of growth. No, this PPF just shows what your potential is right now. It doesn't show you how that's changed over time. So that's not the right answer. Negative output gap. Right. Yeah, the economy is currently inside its potential. So that seems like the definition of a negative output gap. The labor force is not declining. Your labor force is what forms your PPF, and your PPF isn't shifting. So the labor force is the same. We don't see any change in the PPF. Negative economic growth would be kind of a shift inward. Same with that one actually. A rise in the exchange rate. The price of the pound increases. It does two things. It makes the price of exports more expensive and the prices of imports cheaper. So M should increase and X should decrease. And that is likely to not increase import prices, the other way around. Reduce, no. Other way around. Okay, so then we have to link this to something else. So X minus M falls. And if that falls, AD falls. So it's not going to increase demand. Right, if there's less demand, there's going to be less output. And with less output, there's going to be less requirement for employment. Which of the following is most likely to lead to an increase in structural unemployment in the UK? Structural unemployment is because the workforce has different skills to what the jobs are available. So we're looking for something that creates a mismatch. Something like competition from China and India. So these countries compete very well in low-cost manufacturing products and manufacturing products in general. So that's going to eat away any market that the UK has. And over time, anyone who is working in those industries in the UK will possibly lose their jobs. Okay, the long run AS shifts left because there are fewer factors of production, or they're lower quality, such as there's been a destruction in technology, or there's been less education. People have, for example, lost their jobs and can't find work for a couple of years, so they lose some skills. And so, yeah, a fall in the capital stock means there's less factor of production of capital. Circular flow of income, this is good. This is something to just remember, that your income has to equal your output and your expenditure. So that's it. That's a definition question. Supply side policy, I'm looking again for something that shifts that long run AS to the right. So we need to introduce more factors of production or a higher quality of those factors of production. And so I'm not looking to boost AD. And incentives to work, yes, this could work because then you have a higher quality of your labor force. Everybody's working harder, working more effectively. Which of the following fiscal policy measures would be most likely to reduce aggregate demand? To reduce AD, I need less C, less I, G, less X, or more M. And fiscal policy specifically is about taxes and government spending. So I'm looking for something that decreases government spending or increases taxes, because that would mean if you tax households more, if you tax businesses more, they're going to consume less. So everything might sound convincing, but I'll try and filter through it. So reducing state retirement pensions. You're reducing people's incomes. Right, so here the translation to this is they're decreasing government spending. And that seems to work for the definition that we've got. We're looking for that decrease in G and that increase in taxation. It doesn't really matter that taxation's unchanged. I know because government spending has fallen, aggregate demand has fallen, so that really seems to be the answer. The next one, reducing taxes, that would be the other way around. That would increase consumption. That's wrong. Increasing welfare payments would increase AD. Increase government spending. All these will increase AD. We need it the other way around. Here we have index numbers, and we need to. Right. So what's happened? We know that there's been economic growth every year. We've had economic growth because the GDP has increased every year. So I'm looking at the word must. I'm always skeptical about that one. Always a bit nervous about that one. So I have no information on the labour force for sure. I have no information on the rate of inflation, I think. And the government's budget deficit. No, I don't know what's driven the increase in government in GDP. But I do know that because there's been more growth, you can't have growth just with the supply curve shifting. It has to be accompanied with an increase in AD, so that looks like that's the answer. A recession with falling real GDP. Okay, the accelerator. The accelerator is that thing that if there's less GDP, so if there's less output, the firms are not going to need their capital much more. They're not going to need all of them anymore. So they might start not using their capital and eventually selling that capital off that they don't need anymore. So they're going to scrap some investment and the investment will fall. So yeah, this is kind of awkward. All of these rise in investment, that's not going to happen in a recession. Not with falling real GDP. Interest rates fall, that's to do with monetary policy. These confusing. It says that if investment is still taking place but slower, so there's still an increase in I, and that's not going to decrease GDP, so I'm pretty confident with that one. The shift from AD1 to AD2, so we're looking at more C, I, more G, more X, and less M. And this could be caused by an increase in the budget deficit. Yeah, if you increase your budget deficit, remember budget deficit means G is greater than T. And to increase that, you must have had more G or less T. And less T, by the way, causes increased consumption. So that's the answer. An increase in inflation in an economy. So we're looking for two things. We're looking for demand pull inflation, so increased AD, which could be because of more C, more I, more G, more X, and less M. Or it could be because of cost push reasons, so your AS curve shifting left, and that could be because of less factors of production or lower quality, higher costs, that kind of thing, higher average total costs. So I'm looking for one of these two things. I'm going to skip A, looks tricky. Growing positive output gap. Okay, if the economy is operating above its potential, then you're going to be very, very, very close. You don't have any more output that you can gain. And any more increase in AD will create inflation. So this might be the case. It's probably not causing inflation, but it might be contributing. Sustained increase in productivity, no, that's wrong. Because that would shift your AS curve to the right, and we need it to shift left. A recession, that's going to move AD the wrong way around. That's going to move AD to the to the left, which will reduce prices. A rise in the value of a currency. Okay, so if the price of the pound increases, we have two things. We have the price of imports are going to fall and the price of exports will increase. Whoops, X will decrease, M will increase, so X minus M will decrease and therefore AD will decrease. That won't cause inflation. So I guess that was it. We actually never saw, it's really interesting, we didn't see a shift in AD, a shift in AS as I thought. But a positive output gap, so trying to exceed your level of output above its potential, and the output continually growing as tiny amount as it can will just lead to lots of inflation. Remember, you'll be on your really vertical part of your AS curve, and any more growth will create lots of inflation there. If expansionary monetary policy designed to increase AD is less likely to achieve its objective, okay, expansionary monetary policy, we're looking for reduced interest rates or more QE. And this might not work to increase AD if more spending. No, that will help increase AD, right? Because that's more government spending. Cuts income tax, that will help. If you decrease taxes, you will increase consumption, which will increase AD. Increase unemployment benefits, again, that's more government spending and more AD. Reduces the budget deficit. Yeah, this is the one. So you will have less G or more T. Both of these will, that will reduce consumption, less T. And you will get a decrease in AD. So that's going to kind of negate the effects of the Bank of England doing monetary policy. Here we have YE being above the potential of the economy, YFE, or Y full employment. So we have a positive output gap. These diagrams are great fun. And doesn't, look at this, doesn't have a negative output gap. That was a sneaky one, trying to catch you out. Doesn't have a capacity to use up. It's way above its capacity. It's operating kind of on borrowed time. Cyclical unemployment, there's no recession here. Inflationary pressures. Okay, you can see that prices have increased above what they were initially at P1 and P2, and they've increased to P2. Boom phase, when there is a rise in, we're looking for something that increases AD, ideally. So we're looking for something related to that. So more imports is actually going to harm AD, so I think that's not the case. More savings, again, less consumption, less AD, I don't like that one. More spare capacity means that people can produce more goods eventually. I think none of these ones are the answer. And I have a feeling the answer is A. Which is really confusing because imports itself decreases. So more imports will decrease AD. So I just was missing that. But watch out, in a boom, you have really high incomes. And having really high incomes means you've got lots of money to spend on consumption as well as imports. So we could expect in a boom to see lots of import spending. So that one sneaky, nearly caught me out. Which of the following statements relating to fiscal policy in the UK is correct? So fiscal policy, we're looking for government spending changes, taxes changing, and usually this is done to change AD, to then change the business cycle. So an economy usually grows like up and down and stuff, and fiscal policy will try and kind of help it grow in a more smooth line. So yeah, it usually tries to achieve macroeconomic objectives because it tries to achieve growth and more employment when you're in a recession. and it tries to do that. Not micro objectives. Micro objectives are solving market failures, externalities. I think that sounds okay for now. Influences aggregate demand but not aggregate supply. So affects level of economic activity but not the pattern of these got confusing. The pattern of economic activity means like the structure of the economy. And I think that's right. Fiscal policy does not try and change, if we work online or if we do lots of manufacturing. It just tries to change whether we're in a recession or a boom. So that doesn't seem to be the answer. It's controlled by the UK government but not by the Bank of England. Okay, this one I like. So the UK government does fiscal policy. They do supply side policy too. The Bank of England does monetary policy. So that's totally definitely right. A is a little bit uncertain. I suppose fiscal policy is government spending and tax changes. You could say some of the tax changes could be used to solve some of the market failures and stuff. So here we have some volume of imports and exports data, and we have goods exported. We've got these decreasing by 20%. Imports are increasing by 15%. Services exporting decreasing by 10%. Services imported increasing by 5%. So what could have caused this? Okay, I have to figure out what's going on. The volume of goods are generally, we're getting fewer exports. So I'm just going to put X decreasing, increasing. That's more clear to me. Next line, exports, again, of services decreasing. M is increasing, so we're really seeing here X minus M falling even more, starting from already probably a deficit position. Okay, I can see A is wrong. More labor productivity is going to help sell more goods because the goods will fall in price and that will help sell exports. A rise in inflation, this is okay, so this increases the price of our goods, including exports, so we would expect fewer exports. And because our goods are more expensive, maybe we will buy more stuff from abroad. So that could lead to lots of demand for imports. So I like that one so far. If incomes fall, people are not going to import more, they don't have the money. A fall in the exchange rate, this is going to make exports cheaper. So you'll sell more, and that's the opposite of what's going on. That's a sneaky one. In the short run, a decrease in the AD. So AD falls if there is less C, less I, less G, less X, and more M. So if there's watch out for that negative, a reduction in government spending, yeah, that's the answer. Oh, but I've read this wrong. Wonder if you spotted that one. So it's what's it going to result? So if the fall in AD is asking, what does that result in? I'm going to draw a picture. So we have a fall in AD. I'm expecting lower prices because P1 goes to P2. I like that question. That one nearly caught me out. Y1 to Y2. I am expecting less output, so therefore there'll be more unemployment, not a reduction. There'll be more spending, government spending on benefits because there's more unemployment. There'll be more government spending, so there'll be a greater budget deficit. And okay, there's less output, less incomes, people are not in work as much. So because incomes have fallen, M is going to fall, and therefore X minus M will fall. And I think that's the answer. There will be a reduction in the deficit. That was I don't think I've seen one like that before. The country experiences a significant increase in commodity prices. So we have an increase in costs of production, which means I'm expecting this short run AS to shift left. There's also more exports, so more exports will increase AD, so I'm expecting that to shift to the right. So, I don't know, I always highlight things. It's hard for me to see two things going on at once sometimes, so I think that the economy will move to G. Which one of the following is most likely to lead to an increase in the size of the current account deficit? That, at the year 12 level, is okay to think about in terms of X smaller than M. An increase in the deficit means things are getting worse. So X is falling and M is increasing. So this question is asking what caused that? If the exchange rate falls, if the price of the pound falls, we would expect the price of exports to also fall. And that should lead to more X. So that looks wrong. A fall in consumer spending. If C falls, AD falls, and output falls. I don't know, I'm not linking it to X minus M so easily. I'm going to skip that one. If there's less income taxes, you will have more income, more disposable income, and there'll be more spending. So a fall in taxes should lead to more spending, including on things like imports, which means it's the answer. Which statements relating to monetary policy is correct? A cut in interest rates always increases inflation. Doesn't always. Watch out for that word. I'm just going to cross that out, even though it might sound convincing. While reducing excess demand, an interest rate rise may increase cost push inflation. Right? So an interest rate rise, if you increase interest rates, you're increasing the cost for anyone that's taking out a loan. So firms' average costs of production will increase if firms had taken out loans before things are more expensive. And that shifts your short run AS to the left. And when that happens, I'm going to sketch a picture. That happens, your prices do increase from P1 to P2. So, I mean, that sounds like it could be the answer. At least it says may also. The government reduces its spending. There's less spending. At the same time, the Bank of England increases interest rates. Higher interest rates are going to decrease consumption, decrease investment, and increase savings. So I'm expecting that AD is going to fall, but aggregate demand will fall. That looks good, although the inflation part I'm not so certain about. If AD falls, you would expect lower prices. So I wonder what they're doing there. P1 to P2. Not sure about that bit. I suppose you could argue that increased interest rates, as we mentioned, could increase costs of production. So it could shift your short run AS to the left. So maybe you could argue that there could be some increase in prices. So I mean, it's possible. I don't think it will. Aggregate supply will fall. Yes, that's what I've drawn. But economic growth will rise. No, certainly not. You've got two things decreasing. Unemployment will fall. No, it looks like the economy is shrinking. Inflation will fall, but unemployment will rise. So I think unemployment will rise because the economy is definitely shrinking. It's got the AS shifting left and the AD shifting left. So I like that one a lot. I think it's more likely that inflation will fall compared to if it increases, because the cost of production are probably increasing by a smaller amount than the change in consumption, as consumption is such a bigger part of the UK economy. Great, so that was it. I hope you found this useful, interesting, and you are motivated to have a look at the next Year 12 macro revision multiple choice quiz. Thank you. Bye.